Hiya, and welcome back to Wonderlands. Ladies and gentlemen, today I have for you one hell of a build. You guys should know the jam at this point. What if I told you you could unleash the most vicious of pixies that absolutely brick every single thing they come into contact with? What if I told you that every single time we throw our pixies, we're generating one barrage of arrows, one action ability? What if I told you that every single time we cast one of those action ability arrows, we are getting 50% of our health and we have 3 action abilities to cast? What if I told you that because our pixies scale off of spell damage, companion damage, and gun damage, that they are going to be doing, yes, absurd damage, but we have specifically built ourselves for spell damage, so you're also going to be able to live your mage's best life? And what if I told you every single time we hit something with our barrage, they are going to be weakened by 40%, so you also, if you want, although it's not necessary, can play a little bit of support to your pixies. But because we're scaling up so much magic damage, which scales up our pixies, we are also going to be doing good magic damage. Lastly, what if I told you I gave you the best fresh start I possibly could, stacking the deck as much in your favor as I possibly could? Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the Pixie Warden. I'll be honest, it's hard to make that sound cool. Yeah, if you guys give me a better name, I'll use it. Anyways, it's the best I got. Spore Warden, Pixie, get off me. Alright, so let's start with the basis of this weird, chaotic, but answers as many questions as I've ever seen any build answer. We'll get into the specific details of what each gear piece is doing and why you're getting certain skills, but let me just tell you the formula of what you're going to want to do with this build. Again, you're going to want to chuck your pixies, but now every time we chuck our pixies, we're going to be getting stacks of barrage. This is found within our shield, within an enchantment for the Spore Warden specifically. Not only that, but one of the things that limited my previous build, which is why we're not entirely calling this the ultimate summoner, because we're not really having too many summons besides our pixies. Now granted, we're doing a ton more damage and have way more, like, we can actually play if we want. We can shoot arrows and also cast some spells. But one of the things that people were saying back in that video is I should use Reaper of Bones, which is really awesome of an ability, but I dislike when there's ever downtime within a build. So with this, we have 3 casts of barrage, which can come back in one single throw of our pixies, which synergizes far too well because we're constantly throwing our pixies. Not only that, but every single time we use barrage, we're getting 50% of our shield, which is just giving us a crazy amount of survivability. Not only that, but because we are playing the Spore Warden, we are going to get an access to amplified companion damage, which of course we proved that our pixies can also deal. But with barrage, we have 3 casts of our ult, which is insane. And for whatever reason, action skill activation enchantments are nuts. They give you 50% rather than 30 on spell casts, but with this weird synergy, we're able to basically constantly keep those on back-to-back cooldown. Now right now, granted, there is a kind of a weird glitch in the game. Regardless of whatever action skill activation you have, they seem to last around a minute. So basically, this gives us 0 downtime, which to me is like the perfect antidote to this crazy chaotic build that we now have. So we can keep those on 100% uptime, and also the arrows is actually just a really good action ability in general. It does a nice payout of damage and all that. I know I'm talking quite quick, and it's just because I want to make sure you guys can understand as much, even though I should save that, of course, for the explanation, detailed portion of the video, so forgive me, but it's my brain, it's rough. But, my friends, I did want to say that this build is kind of absurd. Again, the way I test a build and its merit is, of course, seeing how fast it can drop a boss, but also going into the Chaos Chamber and getting every single curse I can, the worst of the bunch, crippling crit rate or crit damage, crippling status damage, dealing so much elemental dot damage, everything, and I could not be put down. Not only that, but whenever we sync up a barrage hit, enemies are getting weaker, so this provides a crazy amount of usefulness if you're playing in co-op. Not only that, but of course your pixies will phase through the wall and just kind of hunt everything relentlessly, which is incredible. I'll explain the gear and how important it is to everything, but basically know that this build perfectly sequences into itself and synergizes better than anything. And on the topic of is it too powerful, I mean, the gameplay you're seeing kind of speaks for itself. but I will say that I don't think this should be the thing that Gearbox nerfs. Not because it's not powerful, and I realize I probably am biased, but I don't think things should be punished for synergizing. I think the fact that only this weapon scales off of 3 things is kind of annoying, frankly. Like, I think the fact that it does gives it utility for any kind of way you want to build it. You can throw this into anything and see a lot out of it. And to me, that's a damn shame that most guns aren't scaling off of more things so that they can fit more into builds. But I digress. The fact that every single time we reload, we get a stack of spell weaving means that we're going to do more spell damage, which would mean your pixies are going to do more damage, as well as your spells, as well as all of that stuff. But alas, ladies and gentlemen, let me pivot over to the detailed description of why things are feeding into each other if you want to know a greater idea of what's happening and also why you're doing what you're doing. But if you don't care about any of the details, then there is going to be a link in the description that will take you to our Discord, which has our save file. Also, there will be a video there that tells you how to install a save file as well, if there is any confusion there. Yes, but that is the general synopsis of the build. Let's get into the details. Alright, so now, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into the meticulous detail of all the things hippity happening with this build. Let's get into it. So first things first, I just want to talk about the amazingness of this enchantment, and I hope this becomes a standard when they're hopefully going to add more enchantments in the future. Fingers crossed. But this is the insanity of synergy within our build. So this is the first thing we're going to explain. We're going to go in kind of chunks, so explain things individually. Hopefully that'll be easier to understand, because apparently last time I went a little quick. Forgive me, the brain I was born with. But how this is working is with the nature of getting pixies, you need to reload a lot. And the reason why that's relevant is every single time we reload, we get a stack of barrage, completely circumnavigating cooldown rate with action skill activation, which is nuts. But that's not it. Whenever we activate an action skill, not only detonating some of the most high value enchantments in the game, we are also getting 50% of our shield back. And we have 3 charges of our barrage, so we can just hyper stack this and basically become immune or immortal whilst we do this. So let me try to kill myself a little bit right here. Hopefully this doesn't absolutely annihilate me. No, oh fucking shit, wait. Yes. Not a lot of damage, frankly. We're playing on chaos level 20, insane. Anyways, we have a tiny chunk on. We're going to use our barrage, boom. Now we have shield. If you had no shield, you would get half of your shield, and we could just keep spamming barrage. And now we don't have any barrage. Oh, what's to do? We reload and do our pixie meta, and also, this perfectly synergizes because only 3 pixies can exist in the world space at a time. So we, at the minimum, we're supposed to reload 3 times, which synergizes perfectly, giving us 3 more barrage shots. And because we have such high fire rate, our pixies actually go away quite quick, so we also want to keep doing that back to back, which is nuts. So let me talk about why I think this is so wonderful, just from a gameplay perspective. In the previous build that I made, where we were basically the ultimate summoner, summoning hydras and pixies and all these crazy things, dark hydras, all that, was very, very good. But it did kind of have the problem of you basically can do nothing. Like, you're just basically watching your pixies melt things, which is very, very fun and kind of the ultimate flex as a summoner. To sit back, not lift a finger, and have your whole summons just rip up the world. But I will say, sometimes your summons didn't focus on the enemy that you wanted to. They didn't stack up in a way. You still melted everything, but it was just a problem. Also, sometimes you want to actually play and sometimes shoot, which you could do, both stack damage, and that was pretty good. But not the best answer. What's a better answer is to always be imbuing or like throwing arrows that weaken the hell out of whoever you hit. And you basically having unlimited barrages, it just synergizes too well. Not only that, but because pixies are counted as spell damage, we're also able to use this insanely good spell, boom. That thing does 100 damage per icicle, and we fire 4 of those. And it's just madness, okay? So this is a build that you can actually play, although you don't need to if you do not want to. But that's that. So that's something that you guys are going to need to know, and that's something that kind of makes the build, is this specific getting barrage back on reload, which we are intrinsically doing with our pixies. Lovely jubbly. Okay, so in order to make this simpler to understand, also praise the devil, to make this easier to understand, we're going to go in bite-sized pieces. So let's start with the pixies. How are we buffing the pixies? Well, we're buffing the pixies by increasing our spell damage and companion damage, and a little bit of gun damage. Gun damage kind of slightly increases pixies, but let's try to simplify it. Anyway, so how we are doing this within our skill tree is predominantly by getting an absolute boatload of spell stack weaving. We are going to be getting 11, I think, in total, which is 110 damage amp, because every stack counts as 10. So we're giving our pixies 110 damage amp just with these 2 things. Boom and boom. Absolute madness. Okay? Not only that, but they do scale off of companion damage from our testing, so we are going to be giving them 40% companion damage. Lovely. Not only that, but they also scale off of fire rate increase, so of course we are going to get our insane stacks that we're gaining from spell stacks also increasing with fire rate. So the more spell stacks we have, the faster we fire. Not only that, but when we instantly kill things, which at this point we already do, we are going to be getting an extra 24 fire rate when we kill things, 2 things specifically, as well as a nice movement speed for the road. Not only that, but because we're regenerating our shield at a drop of a hat whenever we activate Barrage, we are going to be taking the ability to basically not have our shield regenerate at all, because we can automatically do that constantly. Awesome. Not only that, but we're getting 30 spell damage for the road. Fantastic. Not only that, but because we're reloading constantly, we're also wanting to double dip into that, so we're getting 10% of our shield just for doing that. Awesome. Now, because our pixies are counted as spell damage, they also benefit from spell critical hit chance up by 60%. Golly. Okay. Not only that, but because we're going to be hucking our spells constantly, reload speed is always nice for the road. Lastly, because our pixies do benefit from gun damage, we're getting this. That's a simple answer. I don't want to go into the complex answer. Basically, because think of gun damage as the jumping off point for spell damage. So the higher the jumping off point, the kind of better the spell damage, but it's not as good as just building spell damage or companion damage. Does that make sense? Hopefully. And lastly, let us talk about why Barrage is so good and why you're using Barrage constantly. And that is basically because of this. Right down here, Wrath of Nature. Whenever we damage an enemy with an ability, which it's very easy to do that with a giant barrage of arrows also having 3 charges, easy peasy to do that. Also, we're able to get charges back in 1 second by just reloading. So whenever we damage an enemy, we're going to be increasing the damage we deal to them by all sources by 54% for 12 seconds. It's such a long time. And we can do this to everybody. And this is kind of the thing where this is the reason why you're going to be constantly using Barrage, is so that you're making your pixies hit that much harder. Granted, everything will be dead before you can really do that a lot of the time. But for bosses, you can do something. Not only that, but one of the other weaknesses to my build, which I should have mentioned, the pixie build, is sometimes the pixies they go a very far distance. They phase through walls and are hella aggressive, which is why it's so damn good. And you'll like clear the map in like 1 second. But with some like 2 or 3 bosses that they'll go really far away from you, your pixies will basically be out of range. So at that point, you're going to be benefiting from Barrage, but also something else from our spell, essentially, just to spoil it. Our spell is hitting absolutely hard because we are also buffing 110 spell damage, so spells inherently destroy the world. Last thing when it comes to ability damage that's important that we're getting here is, of course, greater ability damage scaling, as well as this is the only, honestly, you could put this 1 point in anything, but this was the one thing that kind of had the most value for 1 point. But we're not really benefiting from this because our pixies do not count as gun damage, which is what's setting this off as gun critical hits. But in my experience, our Barrage also benefits from this, which was kind of quite nice. But ultimately, we're not able to really benefit from this too much because our main source of damage is not that. But granted, we can shoot our gun in our hand, and when we do that, it's counted as gun damage. So we're able to get that, but it's kind of just a throwaway perk. You can put this wherever you want. And lastly, just because we're here in the skill tree, I would suggest pumping strength, basically critical damage, as well as status damage, because those are the 2 things we're going to be building off of. And then you can put whatever points you want into dexterity or intelligence. Frankly, because there's so many ways to get inherent higher crit rate with our pixies, with our melee weapon and such, and also that 1 skill point that just makes spells crit easier, I feel like this is actually a waste. I'm actually going to reallocate this and put this into intelligence because our spells hit so hard that it's just better to have that, and also more fun. Also, just by reducing the crit rate will not make things melt any less fast, so yes. Now, let's talk about how we're intrinsically making our pixies work overtime with enchantments, because for whatever crazy reason, the enchantments for action skill start or end or whatever have just inherent more value than spellcast, which is crazy in a way, at least if you're playing Spore Warden that has this. Now, how we are buffing up our pixies in general is our pixies again count as spell damage, so this on action skill start deal an increase of 40% more spell damage. Again, our spell damage is already being buffed by 110%, so it just gets exponentially more crazy, and might as well talk about this now. Whenever we melee attack an enemy, we are going to be increasing our spell critical hit chance by 80%. absolutely nuts. And because, again, we have this, which is going to increase our melee damage, surprisingly enough, when you have to hit somebody, you'll drop them hard, which is awesome. Also, I should mention this, this whole thing is taking our 110 spell damage and putting it into our ability damage, so our barrage actually hits kind of hard, as well as our melee. So yes, just an amazing bit of damage there that's feeding intrinsically into what these things scale off of. Lovely. And then lastly, for our one spell, we are getting this. When you activate your action skill, you are going to be increasing all elemental damage by 35%. And this is what I meant by giving you guys the strongest start. This is one of the things I meant by giving you the strongest start. I'll tell you guys what I mean by that at the end. But alas, what I also gave you guys is this, a volatile pixie with crossbow bolt stack. It's almost perfect. If it was ×2, it'd be brilliant. And poison damage is neat, but not very good. I think Cryo and Dark Magic are the kingpins in Wonderlands that are kind of the best. But anyways, this is the best that I got for right now. I'll update the save and make an update video if I find better things, of course. But I digress. Again, I tried to make this as modular as I possibly could, so you'll never need to change your melee weapon, and you'll never need to change your spell. And you won't want to, because they're both insane. But what this does is on action skill start, you're getting 50% poison damage, which this is always on cooldown. And like I mentioned, there's a weird glitch within action skill start where they last for a minute total, but even if they didn't, it would still be nuts. Because there's versions like this one. It's basically the same thing as this, which for 10 seconds you get this up as action skill start. So you just need to re-roll that until you get that, and I probably would do that for you, frankly. And guess what the Cryo one has? On action ability start, you get frost damage. And this is actually really, really good too, because this can kind of be a stat stick for your amazing spell that's already hitting hard. It's already hitting for 1000k, so if you held this and then used this, it would hit that much harder. But also, this is the dream. This is not quite the dream. That one actually has a lot of things out of alignment. This is melee damage, which is not what you want. And things like this give me hope. So this is unfortunately a guns with wings, so it's not scaling off the spell damage, but I just want to show it to you guys because I thought it was quite cool. But anyways, it's got the crossbow bolts deal added damage with more shots, but it also is ×2, and if this was Pixies, it would be perfect. And if this was Dark Magic or Cryo, it would be even nuttier because those are some of the best elements in the game. Cryo basically having the highest scaling and also the best utility. And of course, a Dark Magic just giving you a ton of healing, and also there's a class mod specifically scaling its damage, which is quite nice. Also, one thing I want to mention is, again, Cryo is nuts in this game. Cryo basically gives you an incredible amount of utility, meaning it'll lock enemies in place, making it so that they can't attack you or shoot you, and you can just lay into them, which is quite good, and things I don't think people mention enough, because it's so good for an enemy just to kind of be immobilized for a hot second, especially when there's a lot of chaos, curses that wreck you when enemies get close, or when they can do anything. So yeah. And alas, I just gave you guys some amazing spell. I duplicated this. I gave you guys an amazing spell stacking thing, crit chance, as well as spell damage. Goddamn madness. Yes, the only thing out of alignment is that disgusting melee damage. Anyways. And yeah, that's basically the damage formula nonsense soup that's happening. But let's talk about one last thing, which is your shield. So, there's a lot of shield options. This one, it took so long to get this, you have no idea. But this one was the best bang for my buck because we're buffing up so much spell damage and because we're inherently wanting to cast spells more often. This worked far too well. And essentially, whenever you cast a spell, it will spawn an AoE thing underneath an enemy in a pretty decent radius, and this is on spell cooldown. Now, one thing I want to ask you guys is, maybe just because I love using my magic and I'll constantly output that crazy sniper shot spell that we have, which by the way has insane range, so if there's ever a boss that's far away from you, this can drop enemies really quickly. This is one of my answers to that question of sometimes there's bosses that are far the fuck away, and this will just nuke them really quickly. Also good for fight for your life, because yeah, sometimes an enemy's far away and your pixies are trying to throw a pixie at them, and you can just snipe them with this. Anywho, again, this thing hits hard as hell, and I don't know if it scales off of the spell you use or something, but regardless of whatever I kind of happen to stumble upon, this thing destroys shit. And yeah, but you'll also have other options here. You have, of course, the absolute amazing sham that's going to be regenerating, giving you ammo, and also just keeping you really safe. In my testing, this one was good, but not great, because we're regenerating just half of our shield with this necklace. The fact that we have such a high base capacity here is insane, giving us a great deal more to recover and also have more for a dot damage to chew through, which, by the way, as much as the sham is fantastic, the dot damage is relentless in this game. And the fact that this is also another thing that sequences, but every single time we reload or throw out our Pixie, we're getting 10% of our shield, and of course, we're going to be going back and forth between throwing our Pixie to get a stack of barrage, activating stack of barrage, regenerating half of our health, and then we'll just repeat the process over again, basically giving us plenty of regen of our shield and plenty of tankiness to just chew through any dot ever. Hopefully I'm showing you guys a clip right now of us just getting hit with like 6 different elemental tethers in a soup of elemental damage and just kind of chewing through it by remembering to keep using barrage and throw our Pixies, which gives us chunks of chunks and keeps intrinsically feeding into itself. But I digress. I'll calm down. Forgive me. And lastly, this is the other one. So this is the one I actually do think is it's kind of a toss-up between what you want. Now, because I gave you 2 types of Pixies, if you ever encounter the curse that basically makes enemies immune to the damage source that you do, you have 2 options here as well. That's also why I made them individual to the enhancement of their element. But yes, this right here essentially is giving you, when you kill an enemy, you get your health back, which is nice just to have some more survivability. But what's even crazier about this, it's giving you 20% bonus fire damage, meaning whenever you do any damage, it's going to do bonus fire damage. Now, what's crazy is that we're doing so much high damage with this volatile weapon that's getting exponentially scaled based on all of the action skill activations that we have, that it's going to hit exponentially hard, so that 20% of shield, wherever it was, is going to be a really, really high hit. It's going to burn things alive. Whereas sometimes if you're not hitting very hard, that 20% is going to be minuscule. But also because we're hitting so much, the fact that it is only a short amount of time is fine, because we have plenty of time, because our Pixies are like hitting things 1,000 times. Lastly, in terms of my goodie bag, again, me trying to give you guys as much of a stacked deck as I can, 1,000 different options to play. Essentially, I have this for you guys as well. This one also has the very, very necessary this. This is the main thing you're going to want. This is going to give you an extra 30 spell stack weaving, which feeds into fire rate, spell damage, all that stuff. Really, really important to have this as a thing that validates your spell shot build. This right here makes it. But this one is going to give you, whenever you activate poison damage on an enemy and the status damage detonates, you're going to be detonating an AoE of poison. And I did notice this actually did hit pretty hard. This is kind of my first attempt to try to patch one of the problems with this build, which is you're not doing a lot of splash damage, which we don't need to, because we're basically firing so fast. Also, I like using our barrage a lot more. It's just funner to just hit things with your arrow and weaken them. And also, I gave you guys this one. This one's also pretty good. It's going to give you critical chance reduction, but it's going to increase your critical damage. It's pretty good, but it does scale up your Pixie's damage quite a lot. But to me, again, I still found it more fun to just be able to use your barrage in the downtime of you waiting. So you don't have to just do nothing, I guess. And it is also valuable to do that. And lastly, this is just meant to be a stack bot for you to get spell weaving if you want. And if you do run out of ammunition, you do have this, albeit it's not crazy. It's okay, but it's not crazy if you want to find a better power weapon to use in the downtime. If you ever just go buck wild and like literally non-stop throw your Pixies, then yeah, you'll chew up your ammo magazine. But again, if you did do that, you still have a lot of barrage, or you have a lot of casts of this, which frankly, this is also, you can just save this for a rainy day if you want. Although, with the amount of spell cooldown we have and how fast it comes back, it's on an 11-second cooldown, you'll be able to spam this if you want and pretty much always have it. Also, some more things in the goodie bag. Sorry, we're not done. I'm also going to give you guys more luck chance. If you want to put this on before you open some chests, you'll have a higher luck chance as well. This also works companion damage activation. It just doesn't feed it as intrinsically into our spell, which I liked better. Where is it? Where's my tiny necklace? This one right here. This one gives you 30% more luck. So if you want to slap that on as well, you'll have a higher chance of getting good loot in the bunny room. Or whenever you open up chests. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what I meant. That's what I meant by the most stacked deck I could possibly give you. Okay, this is one of the best jumping off points for you just to go off in the world, destroy what you want, and benefit wholeheartedly from that destruction. Okay. Essentially the last thing when it comes to myth rank, just pick what you want. It's like ability damage is what we're scaling off of, but predominantly spell damage and companion damage. Buy whatever is in there. Also, reload speed is helpful. Again, I trust you guys will eventually figure out what the hell you're using and why you want what you want. Excellent. Also, the save file that I'm giving you has chaos level unlocked, every access to every place that you can get to unlocked, so you can just run around to your heart's content, and yes. And also, this is on a separate save file, I'll say. So you do not need to delete my previous Pixie build that was functioning off of the summoner idea within Graveborn. This is static, so this will basically, you can just install this and you won't need to overwrite the previous build or delete the previous build in order to get this. I got a brand new template for you guys, so you guys won't have to do that. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll say it right now, Hundo P, we've peaked. We've 100% peaked. Absolutely. This is the most insane thing I think that is possible in the game. I don't think it should be nerfed because it literally just synergizes perfectly. I think this should be the standard of the fact that weapons have multiple scaling, the fact that everything feeds intrinsically into each other and it just becomes a nice soup of damage. And as well as me trying to patch every problem you could have. If you have a boss that's far away, well, guess what? You have a sniper shot that destroys everything in its path. And it's also something that you're going to want to keep on because it buffs up any sort of elemental damage, which you'll want to change individual pixie damage for that. Oh, also one thing I would be remiss not to say real quick, I basically, the first time I ever seen the OP nature to this Spore Warden ability was from a lovely OG Borderlands creator called Jadults. He has an amazing build called the Blastmaster build. It's fucking awesome, but he was the first one who showed me this, and also I downloaded his save file, and I got the sham as well as this amazing where is it, volatile thing right here, this perfect rolled thing for Spore Warden and Spell Shot. So I got that from him. He's as OG as it gets and as creative as you'd think. So yes. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what I have for you. That is the strongest start I can possibly give you. Also, if I could just give you one more thing, I'm sorry I keep talking your ear off, but there's still things to improve upon. So if you're going to go into the Chaos Chamber and detonate some bunnies, this would be what I would tell you guys to focus on. I would suggest finding a Cryo Pixie, ideally with this as well, this bolt stack damage. The reason why is because, again, Cryo is just a useful element in terms of its utility. The fact that it stuns enemies is just insanely good. And also it has some of the highest base scaling for elemental damage in the game, kind of being the best element. But I'll also say, if you happen to find the increase to dark magic damage, efficiency, and damage by 30%, the conversion elemental class mod, with this, that's the thing that makes and breaks it, with this specific perk, with this point. So if you can get that, I think that would be better, because that would just, because right now we don't need more damage. We don't need more damage. We also don't need to really deal damage with our crossbow if you don't want to. But also we could have like the most insane survivability with that combo as well. If you had a Pixie that was also dark magic, and you were converting and amplifying dark magic damage by 30, and you also had on action skill activation, you get 30% more dark magic or 50% more dark magic damage, that would hit absurdly hard, as well as healing the absolute hell out of you. So that to me would be pretty chaotic. So if those would be the two things I would say, is try to get the dark magic legendary class mod as well with this specific perk. And then lastly, get a dark magic pixie or a cryo pixie, and then rock the world. The reason why the cryo pixie would be good too is because of our necklace. It's buffing frost damage by 40%. So those are the two improvements that I would say you could make, and if I happen to find those, or if one of you guys happens to give me a save file that has them, I will add this to the build and update the file, and probably make a video updating it, showing it, and seeing if I was correct in these being kind of a ludicrous damage scaling algorithm. Let's see. Or maybe not, maybe no one will find it, because it's quite hard. I've been grinding a lot to get a good bit of this gear, and it's fucking crazy. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I would appreciate to no end if you could run around the Wonderlands community and just go share the love around in terms of the builds, because this community is nothing short of incredibly creative. Again, the Borderlands community has been, viewers, community, build makers, everything has never been nothing shy of absolutely brilliant and creative. And clever, mainly clever. The fact that so many people are throwing out their save files and all these things are it's just lovely, and makes the process of finding something crazy absurd and making things work and synergize so much faster. So we could go support them, all the lovely build creators out there. I would very much appreciate that as well. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this community, even in a small way right now. Thank you kindly for your time. Hopefully I can see you again, and goodbye, my friends.